Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. Pain has a flavor, and right now it tasted like iron and regret. Kalen staggered into the sterile lobby, his hand pressed against the wall to keep from collapsing, leaving a smear of rainwater and grime on the pristine white paint. He didn't have time for insurance cards or waiting lists. The safe house raid had gone sideways, resulting in a 3-story fall onto a dumpster that felt more like concrete. His lower back was screaming a symphony of agony that radiated down his legs, making every step a gamble against gravity. He needed a doctor who asked no questions and accepted cash, and according to his handler, the Nightingale Clinic was the only place open at 3 a.m. for private consultations. He shoved through the double doors of the examination room, gasping for air. "I need a doctor," he rasped, his voice rough with smoke and exhaustion. "Now." The figure standing by the backlit X-ray board didn't turn immediately. The man was tall, encased in a lab coat that looked tailored, his posture rigid and commanding. The air in the room instantly grew colder, heavy with a scent that Kalen hadn't smelled in 7 years. Sandalwood and expensive antiseptic. The doctor turned. Gold-rimmed spectacles caught the light, hiding eyes that Kalen knew were the color of a frozen lake. "You're late," the doctor said, his voice a smooth, deep baritone that sent a shiver down Kalen's spine that had nothing to do with his injury. 7 years, 3 months, and 12 days late, to be exact. Kalen froze, the adrenaline in his veins turning to ice. It wasn't just a random on-call physician. It was Julian Thorne, the prodigy, the heir to the Thorne medical dynasty, and the one man Kalen had destroyed to save his own skin. "Julian," Kalen breathed, the name tasting like ash. He tried to straighten up, his pride demanding he stand tall, but a spasm in his sacrum nearly sent him to his knees. He hissed, grabbing the edge of a stainless steel table. Julian watched him, unmoving. He didn't look like a savior. He looked like a judge waiting to deliver a death sentence. "You look terrible, Kalen. I assume the life of a corporate mercenary hasn't been kind to your complexion. Or your joints. I didn't know this was your clinic," Kalen grit out, sweat beading on his forehead. "I'm leaving." "You're not going anywhere," Julian said, tapping a tablet. The electronic lock on the door engaged with a heavy, final thud. "Not unless you want permanent nerve damage. I saw the way you walked in. Drop foot on the left side. Tremors in the right hand. You've compromised your lumbar spine." "I'll take my chances," Kalen snarled, though he didn't move. He couldn't. The pain was blinding now, a white-hot rod inserted directly into his tailbone. Julian set the tablet down and walked closer, his movements predatory. He stopped inches from Kalen, close enough that Kalen could see the furious heat simmering beneath the glacial surface of Julian's eyes. "Tell me what hurts," Julian commanded softly. Kalen looked away, the humiliation burning hotter than the injury. They had been rivals at the academy, Julian, the perfect scholar, and Kalen, the scholarship kid from the slums who had to fight for every scrap. Kalen had left without a word, stealing Julian's research to pay off a debt that would have killed his family. He had ghosted the only person who had ever truly understood him. And now he had to beg. "My back," Kalen muttered. "Be specific, Kalen. Medical terminology. You used to be top of the class, didn't you?" Kalen shut his eyes tight. "My lower back. The coccyx. The sacrum. Feels like it's shattered." Julian's gaze dropped lower, sweeping over Kalen's soaked tactical pants. "You said your backside hurts. That's a dangerous area for trauma. If the swelling compresses the cauda equina nerves, you could lose bladder control. You could be paralyzed. Just give me a shot for the pain and let me go," Kalen pleaded, his legs shaking. "No." Julian snapped on a pair of blue nitrile gloves. The sound was like a whip crack in the silent room. "You came into my domain. You play by my rules. If you have sacral injury, I need to check for internal bleeding and nerve response. I'm doing a full exam." Kalen's eyes snapped open. "A full? You can't be serious." "Julian, don't do this." "Why?" Julian stepped into Kalen's personal space, towering over him. Are you shy? Or are you afraid that if I touch you, you'll remember why you ran away? The air was thick with unspoken history. This wasn't just about medicine. This was about power. Julian held all the cards, the exit, the pain relief, the expertise. Kalen was just a broken thing that had washed up on his shore. Get on the table, Julian ordered. Face down. Pants off. Kalen hesitated, his heart hammering against his bruised ribs. He considered fighting his way out, but the spasm returned, buckling his knees. He gasped, collapsing forward. Julian caught him. For a second, the contact was shocking. Julian's arms were strong, holding Kalen up with an ease that betrayed the doctor's refined appearance. Julian didn't let go immediately. He held Kalen against his chest, the warmth seeping through Kalen's soaked shirt. You idiot, Julian whispered into his ear, the clinical mask slipping for a fraction of a second to reveal raw, terrified anger. You could have died out there. Would you have cared? Kalen whispered back, breathless. Get on the table. Julian shoved him gently toward the examination bed. Kalen complied, his hands fumbling with his belt buckle. His fingers were stiff with cold and pain. He heard Julian sigh, an impatient sound, before the doctor's hands brushed his aside. Julian undid the belt and the tactical fastenings with efficient, practiced movements. He stripped Kalen of his dignity and his defenses, leaving him exposed on the cold paper of the exam table. Kalen buried his face in his arms, the shame overwhelming. He felt the cold air on his skin, then the warm, firm touch of Julian's gloved hands palpating his spine. L4 is intact, Julian murmured, his voice shifting into professional detachment, though the tension in the room remained suffocating. L5 is swollen, but here. He pressed down on the base of Kalen's spine. Kalen cried out, biting his forearm to stifle the scream. Sacral contusion, Julian diagnosed. Likely a hairline fracture of the coccyx. You're lucky. A millimeter to the right and you would be in surgery right now. Can I get up now? Kalen panted. I said a full exam, Julian replied coolly. I need to check the pudendal nerve function. And given the location of the impact, I need to ensure there's no internal rectal hematoma. Kalen tensed, his muscles locking up. Julian, you're enjoying this. I am a professional, Kalen. Unlike you, I don't leave things half-finished. Julian's hand rested heavily on Kalen's lower back, a grounding weight. Relax. If you fight me, it will hurt more. It was a trap. Kalen knew it. Julian was using the medical necessity to strip him bare, to force an intimacy Kalen had run to the ends of the earth to avoid. But underneath the fear, there was a treacherous spark of desire. He had missed Julian's hands. He had missed the intensity of Julian's focus. Do it, Kalen whispered into the paper. The exam was a blur of clinical invasion and electric sensation. Julian was efficient, but he wasn't gentle. Every touch felt possessive. He checked reflexes, he probed bruised flesh, and yes, he performed the internal examination that made Kalen gasp and arch his back, his fingers clawing into the sheets. Good tone, Julian noted, his voice strained. No internal bleeding detected. You're clear. He withdrew, stripping the gloves off with a snap. Kalen lay there, panting, feeling thoroughly dismantled. He wasn't just a patient, he was a conquered territory. You can sit up, Julian said, turning to the sink to wash his hands. Kalen struggled upright, wincing as he pulled his clothes back together. The sharp agony had dulled to a throbbing ache, likely thanks to the injection Julian had deftly administered during the chaos. Why? Kalen asked, sitting on the edge of the table, his legs dangling. Julian dried his hands with a paper towel, turning to lean against the counter. Why what? Why help me? After what I did to you. Julian looked at him, his expression unreadable. Because you owe me, Kalen. You stole my thesis. You stole my trust. And you owe me a life. I intend to collect. I didn't have a choice, Kalen said, the old defense rising. My father's debt. The syndicate threatened to kill my sister. I needed the grant money. I knew you would survive without it. You were a thorn. I was nobody. I didn't care about the money. Julian's voice cracked, the composure finally fracturing. He took a step forward, his eyes blazing. I cared that you left. I cared that I woke up and you were gone. We were partners. We were inevitable. Kalen looked down at his hands. I thought you would hate me. I did hate you, Julian admitted, closing the distance between them. He stood between Kalen's spread knees, his hands gripping the edge of the table on either side of Kalen's hips, trapping him. I hated you for 3 years. I spent the next 4 trying to forget you. And then you walk in here, bleeding on my floor, looking at me with those damn eyes. Julian reached up, his fingers tracing the bruise forming on Kalen's jaw. The touch was agonizingly tender. Who did this to you? Julian asked, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. It doesn't matter, Kalen said, leaning into the touch despite himself. It's part of the job. Your job is over, Julian stated flatly. You're not going back out there. I have to. The people I work for. They don't accept resignations. As if on cue, the heavy security shutters on the front of the clinic rattled violently. A muffled shout came from outside, followed by the sound of glass breaking in the lobby. Kalen stiffened, instinct taking over. They followed me. He tried to slide off the table, reaching for the concealed knife in his boot, but Julian shoved him back. Stay there, Julian commanded. Julian, these aren't patients. They're killers. Get out the back. I told you, Julian said, unbuttoning his lab coat and tossing it onto the counter, revealing a pristine black dress shirt underneath. He rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms that were surprisingly muscular. This is my domain. Julian walked to the wall and pressed an intercom button. Security code read. Lock down the perimeter. Neutralize intruders in the lobby. You have a security team? Kalen blinked. I treat politicians, mafia dons, and fugitive spies, Julian said calmly, opening a drawer and pulling out a sleek, suppressed pistol. He checked the chamber with a fluidity that shocked Kalen. Did you really think I spent the last 7 years just reading medical journals? Julian. Stay put, Kalen. If you move off that table and injure your spine further, I will tie you to it myself. Julian stepped out into the hallway. The door sealed behind him. Kalen sat there, heart racing. He listened to the sounds of a scuffle, short, sharp shouts, the dull thud of bodies hitting the floor, and the hiss of hydraulic security doors. It was over in less than 2 minutes. The door hissed open. Julian walked back in. He looked unruffled, though there was a small speck of blood on his cheek that wasn't his. He holstered the weapon and picked up a clipboard as if nothing had happened. Threat neutralized, Julian said, marking something on the chart. Now, regarding your rehabilitation plan. Kalen stared at him, mouth slightly agape. Who are you? I'm the man who owns you now, Julian said, looking up. The ice in his eyes had melted, replaced by a dark, possessive hunger. You came to me for help. I've provided it. Now you're under my care until I say you're discharged. And Kalen, yeah, I don't plan on discharging you for a very, very long time. Kalen let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. The adrenaline crashed, leaving him exhausted. He looked at Julian, the man he had wronged, the man he had loved, the man who had just saved his life with the same cold efficiency he used to diagnose a fracture. My back still hurts, Kalen murmured, a small, tired smile tugging at his lips. Julian stepped back between Kalen's knees. He took a cloth, wet it with antiseptic, and gently wiped the blood from Kalen's face. I know. I'll prescribe you something stronger. I don't want pills. Julian paused, his hand cupping Kalen's cheek. Their faces were inches apart. What do you want? You, Kalen confessed, the truth finally spilling out. I just want you. Julian's eyes darkened. He leaned in, his lips brushing against Kalen's ear. Good. Because the exam was just the beginning. We have 7 years of anatomy to catch up on. Julian kissed him then, hard, demanding, and tasting of coffee and salvation. Kalen wrapped his arms around Julian's neck, ignoring the twinge in his spine, knowing that for the first time in his life, he was exactly where he was supposed to be. He had walked in with a broken back, but he was leaving with a fixed heart. But first, he had to survive the doctor's bedside manner. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf. If you enjoyed seeing Julian take absolute control of the situation, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you trust a doctor who knows exactly how to break you just so he can fix you again? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then,